Carl Gotch. So Carl Gotch, is kind of the founding father of MMA. If you really know have some grappling literacy behind you. Well, I was mentoring with him because I'm obsessed with this sport of catch as catch can, and Josh Barnett. I had actually wanted to meet Billy more than Carl, even because when I saw Sakuraba do what he did, I was like, oh my God, dude, I need to figure out what this guy is doing. It's so amazing. Because I knew it wasn't amateur wrestling. I knew it was wrestling. It wasn't jiu-jitsu, but I was like, what is this? So I did some homework, found out about catch, found out he learned from Billy Robinson. But Billy was in Japan and I was in LA, and there just wasn't going to happen. I didn't have any connections there. So anyway, I knew Carl, and through knowing Carl, Josh Barnett reached out to me. He's like, hey, can you introduce me? And I was like, yeah, dude, of course. So there was some Japanese media, this magazine, wrestling magazine called Gong, and they wanted to do a piece to build up Josh. And so I made this connection for them to connect Josh and Carl. So anyway, it was kind of a quid pro quo where, I connected Josh with Carl. And then, I was like, dude, do you know Billy Robson? He's like, yeah, I can connect you. So then I just went whole hog and flew Billy out from Japan. Billy decided to move to the United States. I think he was done in Japan, but his son Spencer lived in Little Rock, and so he wanted to come back to Little Rock, spend his elderly years with his son, and then we just went to town, and I just was able to apprentice with him for the last 7 years of his life.
That is pretty incredible. And when you started training with him, how did that help you in grappling tournaments? Did you see a benefit in the number of tournaments that you won?
Yeah, I mean, I met Billy, and I was this is 2006, so I was already 34. And so I've had a couple catastrophic injuries. And honestly, I met Billy kind of after my competitive days. So I did a couple like grappling tournaments, like Grappler's Quest and things of that nature. And I did okay. I would get to the finals, then I'd meet a guy like John Wood, who he runs Syndicate MMA in Vegas now. I read some total stud and just couldn't quite get over the hump. But what ended up happening, so I ended up having what's known as a carotid dissection, which is where your carotid artery collapses from being choked. It's actually fairly common. I was part of some study, I think it was University of Minnesota, did a study on grappling strokes and injuries and carotid dissections. Anyway, so I kind of was like at the tail end of me doing anything with my physicality. I just didn't have the longevity that some people get. And I was looking to transition to coaching because I love this. I've been involved with wrestling since Pee-wees when I was like 5 years old or something. So when I got with Billy, I looked at it as an opportunity to not apprentice to be an athlete, but to apprentice to be a coach. Because at this point, I was starting to realize, like, dude, I've got one carotid. I don't know. It's basically like getting half the oxygen to the brain that you normally would get. And it was affecting me because I was a wrestler that relied on my gas tank a lot and not technique. I wasn't technical really that great until I met Billy. I would study technique, but like learning with Billy is like, learning physics with like Einstein or something. So anyway, long story short, I dedicated myself to trying to absorb his coaching style so I could do for other athletes what he did for guys like Sakuraba.
And I did just get a new computer today, so sorry for the delay. I'm just figuring it all out. But that's pretty cool. Now, Billy is known for being a bit of a wild guy. I mean, he's had backstage fights and everything. And I know Davey Boy Smith Jr. always used to tell me that when a waitress would say, is there anything else? He would say, yes, your number, and stuff like that. Do you have any stories you could share about Billy, like the quirky side
so
of
it's
him?
kind of famous. I actually have it tattooed on my arm. If you can see that. See that where it says "Do It Again" and then it has like Billy's signature there. I It was Harry Davy Boy Smith Jr. who was coming to some of the camps that we were holding to train, and you know, Billy was famous for being, I wouldn't call it a perfectionist, but it's kind of like being a perfectionist. And you had to get it right. He was a demanding coach because he wanted the best out of you, but a lot of people would break you. So Harry was one of the first guys where we were like, dude, poor Harry, man. He had to do this one move over and over, and Billy just kept saying, do it again, do it again. But to that point, what the story that Harry was saying to you, Davy Boy Smith Jr., is that Billy was so charming. Do you know? Like, so he'd ask for he'd ask for these girls' numbers, right, in kind of an offhand, flirting way, but it didn't come off like a creepy. It came off like just super cool. The girls were always flattered. You know, he's this old crotchety dude or whatever. But Billy was a real special character, but he did not suffer fools lightly at all. Even if he liked you, he was hard on you. And if he didn't like you, I mean, he would abuse you, like abuse you. He did not give a shit. I'd seen it. I've seen him make people cry. And it was hard because here I am apprenticing him and basically setting up these tours for us to go around so I could spend as much time learning with him. And I mean, he's hitting people with his cane, calling them assholes. Something, Billy, this is really hard for me to sell because you're like abusing these people. But he was one of a kind. You won't find a better coach. He was truly legendary.
Is there any stories he told you about certain wrestlers that he didn't like? Because I heard one story of Archie the Stomper Goldie. He tried something with him and he just left the ring and left the territory for a while after. He was so pissed off.
Billy wasn't one to talk a lot of shit. He just didn't. He just was, he just was that guy. He didn't give a shit. He'd roll in, he'd do what he want. I know some guys when he got older, he went through a rough patch when he started having injuries and a lot of that tough guy stuff that he was doing kind of, I think, came back to haunt him a little bit. So he didn't talk a lot of trash, honestly, about guys. But if you asked him his opinion, he'd be like, "Oh, yeah, that guy was nobody or anything." He really, to be real, if you didn't know how to really wrestle, he just didn't have much respect for you.
Interesting. Did he talk much about Vern Gagne? Because it seemed like Vern really loved him.
Oh yeah, he and Vern got along really well. Billy's spent a lot of time with Greg Gagne as well. Helping train Greg, and Billy ran the camps, so you could see this old footage of Olympian Chris Taylor when he was transitioning to pro wrestling. He went and worked for the AWA, and Billy was running the camp, and guys like Sergeant Slaughter, Ric Flair, like Billy trained like a lot of legendary people, and not just Sakuraba. Like Ric Flair has all kinds of great stories about about how brutal Billy would be, and the kind of physical conditioning and kind of that standard Carl Gotch, Billy Robinson Hindu squats, ridiculous like conditioning stuff that really you only did see with like a Dan Gable or Olympic level athletes, but these guys were, they're just cut from a different cloth.
Technically, he should have some sort of trainer's award because one of the greatest training classes ever was that class he taught where the Iron Sheik was there, Ken Patera, Jim Brunzell, Bob Bruggers, and Greg Gagne. And other than Bob Bruggers, they were all superstars.
Yeah, unbelievable. And the other thing is, if you watch that old movie from the 70s called The Wrestler, it has Ed Asner in it.
Yeah.
Dude, that's a great film. Like, it obviously, I don't think, I could show it to my wife or kids. They'd probably be like, this is awful. But like, for somebody who's into pro wrestling and into kind of that more shoot style, it's got so much great footage. There's so much great footage of him and Gagne and these other Nick Bockwinkel. all these really, really good, strong matches, and it's preserved on film. And this was, you have to understand, like back in the day, Billy would tell me these stories. He was making so much money. He was like The Rock, because he was he was like one of the first guys to do a movie as a wrestler and be like the main guy in it. He was doing something like, I think he was making like at one time like $50,000 a week traveling and make it. I mean, that's like an obscene amount of money today. You can only imagine when the purchasing power in the 70s was. It was like a rock star kind of thing.
Yeah, that's not a good movie for a first date, anyone out there, but for people like us, we might like it.
Yeah, that's fair.
And Ric Flair has a cameo in it. They ask him to pass the rolls or something when they're eating at the.
I don't think anybody would recognize him because he's so fat in that. It's before, I think it was before the plane crash, and he really tidied up his look.
Yeah, he was. I think it was filmed during the time where they were legitimately training him, because at one point they show the training session, which is pretty damn cool.
Yeah, I mean, really, if you're into wrestling and you're into shoot style and you're into catch wrestling, honestly, I'd highly recommend it. So there's a lot of great footage. It's pretty cool. What I did is I cut a bunch of the action sequences out, and I just put the actual. I cut out all the exposition and the dialogue, all that shit, and I just put the wrestling together, and I put that as like an Easter egg in this old instructional DVD that we did called War Catch Wrestling. War was his initials. I just thought it was clever. William Alfred Robinson. And then like as an Easter egg in the DVD menu, nobody does DVDs anymore, but in the menu, you could hit it if you knew where it was, and they had all this cool footage of him wrestling.
Plus, I gotta say, superstar Billy Graham even does a promo in it, so it's pretty cool. And Dusty Rhodes is in it, so wrestling fans of the old school would love it. Now, let's talk about I guess it's called the Mace Bell that you've invented. And when I saw it, all I could think of is this is the perfect weapon for an intruder. And you said you actually have used it.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a story. So let me tell you first. So, okay. Everybody's heard of kettlebell at this point, right? Remember the Dragon Door and how hot that was, like in the early 2000s, and Pavel Tassolin, and like it was trendy, dude. And he was selling these like kettlebell certifications back then for like $4,000, like mind blowing. It was so hot and trendy. Well, I just know I had a kettlebell, but I wasn't like obsessed with it. But I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do this. This is kind of cool. Well, this was 2004. I was very lucky to start mentoring with Carl Gotch. And if anybody's interested, I was fortunate. I didn't get them all, but I got maybe 10 hours of hundreds of hours, but I got good 10 hours or more of conversations with me and Carl. So you can listen in. If you go to carlgotch.com, Karl Gotch, GOTCH.com, I put them up for free. You just listen to them. You might find them interesting. Again, it's a very niche thing. But anyway, I was just obsessed trying to figure out how I could bring this incredible thing, Catch Can, back, because it was dead. When I started Scientific Wrestling, my company, in 2003, it was dead. There was like a couple kind of cheesy charlatans trying to hustle people out of money on it, and but that was it. It was nobody competing in, nobody teaching it. It was dead. And I was like, dude, this shit is cool, man. This Sakuraba thing, like, I need this. Everybody else is doing jiu-jitsu. This is cool. And it's like connected to pro wrestling too. Like, what the hell? This is so cool. So anyway, I end up finding and stumbling on Carl Gotch, and we hit it off because he could tell like I'm like as much of a nerd about this subject as he is, right? And I'm like eager to listen and hear him. And he was just really great to me. He's another guy who has a reputation for being, not suffering fools lightly. But both guys, Billy and Carl, were always great to me. And I think it was just they could tell that I was super sincere about my interests. But anyway, I went to visit Carl. I was out in Florida because I lived in LA, but I was out in Florida visiting my cousin, and she lived nearby. Well, it wasn't really near. It was in Bradenton, but I could get a rental car and drive up to Tampa. And so I went up and was like, Carl, yeah, I'm coming. Dude, let's hang out. Long story short, Carl being Carl makes me run through the whole Gotch Bible like almost puke. Like, well, it's even worse because I was so excited. I couldn't sleep the night before because, like, oh my God, I'm going to go freaking meet Carl. I'm going to work out with this guy. This is amazing. I've been talking to him on the phone for like 2 years. I cannot wait. So I jump in my little car, drive on those crazy bridges in Florida. They're like, I don't know if you've ever seen them, but they go like miles and they're just over the ocean. They're really cool.
Oh,
Anyway,
yeah.
you know what I'm talking about? So I get there and I'm on an empty stomach. I haven't slept because I'm excited. Carl's like, come on in. I'm like, oh, cool. This is so cool. So I go into this little apartment he's got in Tampa and he's like, come on, let's have a cigar. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't smoke cigars. So, but I'm not going to turn this down, this legendary guy. And so he gets me this giant cigar. And I'm like smoking and I'm kind of feeling green. And then he's like, wow, let's have some plum wine. And plum wine is like a Japanese wine, but it's super sweet. It's like syrup. Okay. And so now I'm drinking this syrupy wine on an empty stomach and smoking a cigar. And I'm trying to be cool. And I think Carl was pranking me. I think he was pulling a rib. Because then after I smoked the cigar, he must have known I was not doing too well. And he's like, okay, now we work out. And he gets out the deck of cards and makes me go through the deck of cards. Now I did it. I think I missed. I did not. I think I ended short like 5 cards at the end. I just was puking and I couldn't stop. And I think he was laughing about that. But I think I earned his respect. And so he busted out one of the, it's called in India, it's called a gada, which is what I modeled the mace bell after, right? Yeah, there you go. It's that like, looks like a kettlebell, but instead of the looped handle, it has like a long broom handle on it. So his is made out of wood, and that's how they traditionally are in India. And he lets me try to use it, and I can't use it, and he's laughing at me. But I was like, dude, this thing is dope. And like again, because of certain injuries I had and stuff, I had adapted a certain style of wrestling, and a lot of it relied on conditioning. So that was one thing that I think Carl respected. I had a lot of gas in the tank, and the only compliment he ever gave me is said that I was very agile because I could bridge, I could kick over back and forth, I could do the bridging gymnastics. But the other thing that I really relied on, and again, this was kind of from the legend of Danny Hodge, was grip strength. Because if I got somebody's wrist, they couldn't mess with my injuries. I could have control if I had wrist control. I love wrist control. So anyway, especially defensively, if you watch old Soccer Rabbit, all he does is let the jiu-jitsu guys take his back and he gets wrist control and he does what he wants. Anyway, I saw this mace bell, this gada, and I was like, dude, this is going to blow up my grip even crazier. So I went home after the trip and I started looking around, calling people in LA, because I'm just thinking like, I'm going to make it out of wood like Carl's. And the one guy who I'm like, I describe it to him and he's like, yeah, it'll be like $400. I'm like, dude, what? I'm not going to do that. So then all of a sudden I was like, dude, this looks like a kettlebell. Right. And I was like, dude, why not make it out of metal? And why should I pay for this custom thing? Let me go pitch this, because I've always been an entrepreneur. And I'm like, why don't I go pitch this idea to the largest kettlebell manufacturer at the time? Their name was Torque Athletic. They're out of business now. They switched businesses. They just want to get out and do custom cars and shit like that. Anyway, I pitched it to them and they were like, this is great. And the rest is history. The thing went viral and now it's like everywhere. Like On It, who's like a Joe Rogan owned company. I won't say ripped us off, but ripped us off. They make their own. They call it a steel mace. And so we were the first to really bring this modality to the West and make it like a production mace, like not a custom thing that you go and get, but you could buy somewhere like a kettlebell. So it's been absolutely wild. Now, when I was first dating my wife, again, I was in LA at this time, 2006, 2005, she was getting out of a marriage. She was getting divorced. Well, the husband was a little off his rocker, right? His mother had him hopped up on all these psych meds, and these psych meds have some crazy side effects. Well, long story short, she and I are like, they don't live together or nothing, but this guy's crazy. He breaks into my house in the middle of the night And I'm like, I wake up and I'm like, I thought it was a homeless person because there's so many homeless people in LA. I thought somebody had just come into my house and was homeless. I was like, no big deal. But I had a mace bell next to me. And I was like, I grabbed it and I just, in my underpants, my tidy whities, I run out into into the living room and I was going to kill somebody with it. So luckily I didn't. He fled. But anyway, that's the story.
Yeah, you in your underwear holding one of those things. I'm not going to stick around either.
It's so like a Conan movie or something ridiculous, you know.
Now 10X. This is a very interesting company that I've been reading about. That supposedly, as far as the health section, they can actually pinpoint when you're going to die.
Yeah, so the company 10X 10X is actually more of a brand. Now they've used the brand name to like 10X Health is what you're discussing. This has been made more famous by most recently Dana White, right? Everybody's seen this crazy transformation where Dana was all bloated and on these blood pressure meds and not looking so good. And then these pictures of him like jacked and ripped and looking amazing. Well, that was the result of him working with 10X Health, which is really the health ideas of a gentleman named Gary Brecka. Gary Brecka is he calls himself a human biologist. This guy has like a photographic memory. Very, very, very smart guy who's obsessed with human biology. And he was making a lot of money working for life insurance companies because they could take a swab, like a genetic test, and determine within like a month of when you would die based on these genetic markers. Well, Gary started having a problem with it. He's like, well, I could just tell these people what to do and they'd live longer. And the insurance companies were pissed, right? They're like, dude, you do that, you're going to be in breach. So he's like, well, and he quit and decided to start making a health company. Well, Grant Cardone, who's the guy who owns 10X, he's a billionaire. He's a real estate, private equity real estate
And he's a
guy.
superstar now on YouTube as well.
Yeah, like he's like a celebrity. He's a great guy. He's a fantastic human being. I mean, a lot of people don't know him. I don't know him very well, but I do know him. And the guy is like 100% solid, like just a great guy. Anyway, and he's a billionaire. Like it's just like what? So he's one of these like cool billionaires. I don't know if you think Elon Musk or one of these, but he's like that. He's just such a great guy. Well, anyway, he's like in his 60s and he's a high level dude. I mean, I work hard. Most people are like, dude, I don't know anybody who works harder than you. Grant Cardone works harder than me by a lot. And he's 66 and a billionaire. It's like he totally doesn't have to. He's just like an animal. So anyway, he was in trouble with his health. He was having a hard time. And he'd always worked out. He tried to play pro baseball when he was younger. So he's been an athletic guy. He stumbled onto Gary Brecka. Gary Brecka did the same thing that he did for Dana White prior. But Grant, being a business guy, was like, holy shit. This was like, you changed my life. Imagine what we could do if I took my money, my marketing, and pushed you out to the world. We could change the world. And that's really where 10X Health came from. So, you know, there's all these different protocols, you know, this biohacking, you know, like it's so popular, like what's his name, Dave Asprey or the Bulletproof Coffee guy. There's all these different people do all this biohacking. Gary Brecka has all these great protocols that include kind of the traditional things you see, like the cold plunge or infrared saunas or what you're talking about. Well, what you alluded to with the genetic testing and finding out when somebody's going to die or not is what they do now. And this is actually what I'm really into with regards to the 10X Health program. And they do precision genetic testing. And what that means is you give them a sample, they spin it, and they actually look at your genes and supplement you based on what your genes are. It's really amazing. Like precision genetic supplementation. I love it. I feel like $1,000,000. You kind of got to get in the nomenclature. There's like this thing they call the motherfucker gene. It actually is because the name is MTHFR. Like that's the actual initials. So it looks like motherfucker. But there's like this common gene anomaly that's broken, and it doesn't, for example, doesn't allow people to digest folic acid, folate. Like, and we look at our food and half of it's garbage, right? Like red dye, like they're really like actually poisoning us with half the shit they feed us these days. One of the things that they use is called, if it says enriched, like you'll see enriched bread or enriched noodles for like pasta, that means it has folic acid. That's very difficult for people who have this, which is a lot of people, honestly, this motherfucker mutation. And so you could supplement so that you don't get affected, the negative effect of digesting all this enriched food. That's just one example, but there's all these other modalities. You can go to, I think it's 10xhealthsystem.com as the URL. If you go to YouTube, type in 10x health, it's like everywhere. And you can hear Brecka talking all this stuff. The guy's a genius. He's been on Rogan. He was just on Rogan, largely, I think, because of what he was able to do for Dana White.
Yeah, I've been following him for a while. I can't afford that test right now. I wish I could, but I guess being part of this company, you obviously did the test, right? They
yeah,
do
yeah. So
the blood test.
What my involvement is, I just promote it, try to get people to take it, to buy it. I think it's a great thing for me. I don't tell people to do anything I don't do myself, because I just don't. I can't sell it. It's like I can't sell jiu-jitsu because I'm just like, yeah, I did it, but I don't like it. I like wrestling and I love catch wrestling, right? So I can promote that. I feel ethical, right? Because it's what
I don't like jiu-jitsu either, by the way. I find it boring. So,
look, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people who love it, and that's awesome. But it's like chocolate versus strawberry. Like, you can't. If I like strawberry ice cream, you can't have be butthurt about it. It's like, I don't like it. I like chocolate better than I like strawberry. But anyway, I got involved, honestly, with this whole 10X thing. 10X is much bigger than the 10X health systems. I think 10X health systems, honestly, my guess, if I were to just have a crystal ball or a bet, I think 10X health might be the thing that 10X is best known for ultimately.
Is that Grant Cardone's company? Just to interrupt you, 10X is Grant Cardone's company. Okay.
Well, yeah. Grant Cardone's company is actually called Cardone Enterprises, and he has another one called Cardone Ventures. He's partners with this guy named Brandon Dawson, total another genius. Those companies, Grant started as a business coach, a business consultant, mostly helping people like business owners figure out how to do better in their sales. And then how, everything around sales, like how do you hire more people? How do you do the marketing that makes your sales better? And he just ended up building this. It's almost like a consultancy, but a lot of it's around education and business literacy. And that's really where I came to Grant. So I'm obsessed with all this wrestling shit and this fitness stuff like the Mace Bell and 10X Health. I love all that. But I have my master's degree in financial mathematics, and I worked in investment banking for a number of years. I founded and sold a couple of different companies, like a reverse mortgage consultancy, the first one ever. And then, obviously I've parlayed that to help me with scientific wrestling and the Mace Bell. And now I'm trying to create my own promotion called Shoot Pro Wrestling, which is basically, what if we took the rules of pro wrestling and treated it like the UFC and had real competitors, but tag teams, triple threat matches, singles matches, but with a pin or submission, no punching, kicking. I'm toying with the idea of adding all-in rules, which is like pancreas with pins. But that gets me in like athletic commission crosshairs. And I just would rather avoid that until I get big and just can hire somebody to deal with the athletic commission. I don't have to worry about it. But anyway, I'm like, as much as I love wrestling, I love entrepreneurship. And Grant's like a genius, dude. Like, he's the second billionaire that I've been involved with and kind of, worked with and worked for. And dude, the guy is like, he's so smart, dude. And you don't know because, he's so flashy and he's, cracking jokes and stuff. And I think that a lot of that people see that and they don't go deeper. But somebody like myself that's been in private equity and been in business, and I do, the guy's so smart, and it's just a real honor to be working with him. And so now I'm actually one of his coaches that works for his company. It's actually more of like an affiliate, like a licensing deal where I bought into the company, but I did so well that they invited me to actually start coaching Grant's clients, like clients that Grant had, but he's too busy or people can't afford him. So they brought me in and a number of other people, about 30 other people, to start coaching his clients. And just last month, for the second time, I was the number one coach out of the entire organization of what's called the elite coaching, which is like the top 5% of coaches. So I'm just super hyper competitive, which is, goes with the wrestling thing, but it also I think it dovetails real nice with entrepreneurship. I think there's a lot of crossover between business and sports. I think there are a lot of parallels.
So have you actually had the test done yourself?
The genetic test?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I got that. When they first came out, they had this original test. I've done that one. They just came out with this newer test. So what's kind of cool, I don't have it here. I wish I had my pills here, but I'm in my office. They send you these pills and you take them. But, like when they did the first time, they just did it like normal supplements, like pills. So I ended up taking like 6 pills a day or something that are precision designed for me based on my genes. But what they've done now, and I'm going to do when I get around to it, is this new test. And they basically give you, it's a new test that's even more detailed, gets deeper into your genes, but they give you one packet and you basically rip the packet and it even has your name on it. It says specifically made for Hannibal or whatever. And you rip the packet, you pour it in your drink, and you can just drink it. So you don't even have to take pills. This company is mind blowing, dude. You're right. It's expensive, but remember what they're trying to do is, let's just be real, dude. The medical system is fucking broke. The medical system's broke.
And it's worse here in Canada.
Oh, dude. Well, you guys got socialized medicine, so it's just a problem. Again, because I'm like, mathematically inclined, I actually look at real risks. I don't look at what the news tells me to be scared of. I go look at actually what the real risks are. Okay. Like people want you to be scared of crime and all this shit. Violent crimes are at the lowest rate they've been in like 40 years. Okay. It's still a risk. The number one leading cause of death is medical institutions. It's called iatrogenic harm. You can Google it. IATROGENIC, iatrogenic harm. And it's death by doctor. And it's medical malfeasance, medical malpractice, ADRs, which are adverse drug reactions. If you add in adverse drug reactions, medical malfeasance, medical malpractice, number one leading cause of death of Americans. And that's not some Alex Jones conspiracy site. That's the Journal of the American Medical Association, the largest read peer-reviewed scientific journal on the planet. So what they're trying to do, I think, is take this more serious preventative approach to people's health by using things like genetic testing, red light therapy, PMF mats, all the different things that you can do, cold plunges, these things that dietary changes, things that can make drastic changes with people. And you don't have to get all jacked up on pharmaceutical drugs or surgeries or all this shit that they're always trying to sell that really doesn't help, honestly, and put you at bigger risk.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not worth it because it's clear that that they actually do research into what you need to get fixed. But for you yourself, would you mind saying like what they found that you needed help with?
Yeah, I don't remember. No, dude, I'm fucking jacked. I'm just jacked. I'm like, I had cancer when I was 15. I almost died of a blood clot before COVID, like before it was cool. Like I had this massive blood clot and almost died of that. I've had the carotid dissection. I've broken my neck. Like I'm definitely a 9 lives cat. You know what I mean? So I've been put through the ringer.
I'm up there too. Trust me. I've already stamped my 9 lives card.
Yeah, right. So, and it's interesting because I know when we were talking, we've talked before, we know each other, but you reached out and you're like, tell me about this 10x health. And I know because you've had your own freaking bullshit health stuff that you've had to figure out. At a certain level, when you get really deep into it, you realize these doctors are fucking full of shit a lot of times, and you have to take the responsibility yourself because you're like, dude, you're crazy. I'm not listening to this shit. That's nuts. And so you have to take it on yourself to start studying it. Now, in my case, the genetic test was interesting because I learned a couple things. I'm definitely one of those motherfucker people. I also, which is interesting and fits with the blood clot, I have some sort of vascular genetic thing where I'm predisposed to get blood clots. What I found out, this happened to Harry Smith as well, by the way. I found out after the fact, I got this massive blood clot when I was going over to the UK to coach. So I was going over to the UK. Prior to lockdowns, I went out every year and I would do a tour around the UK, like Johnny Appleseed of Catch Wrestling, trying to get that country to get it going again. And now it's kind of, I think the guys in Wigan have kind of, the spark has caught fire up there. So hopefully it keeps going. But anyway, I went over to the UK with my buddy Sam Cresson, who would help me when we go over there and teach. This is a guy who's a 3rd degree Chris Howard black belt, really spent a lot of time with me and Billy, a great guy too. Anyway, we land after the flight and crash because it's like the time zone difference or whatever. So I crash. I woke up and my entire arm was like swollen, like ridiculous, like a balloon. And so, but I was there for like 3 weeks. I had no idea that I had a massive blood clot. And I continued to coach. I ran like three camps, did like 2 or 3 seminars, hiked all around the city of York, which has got this giant wall. You could it's like miles, walked, like toured on foot, London, did all this physical shit. I get back home and the doctor's like, holy shit, how are you not dead? I'm like, I don't know, just lucky. And I was in the hospital for like 3 or 4 days. But in addition, I also found like, I was always like, I never looked like a bodybuilder. I never had like the pro wrestler look or the pro athlete look. I've always been lanky and kind of awkward and stuff. I'm like I'm like a funk wrestler. My other big coach in my life, besides Billy, was Wade Chalice, who's the Guinness record holder for the most wins and pins in all of wrestling. 5 combat sport All-American, right? He got judo, sambo, freestyle, folk style, Greco-Roman, like just a genius in grappling. In fact, he gave me his first black belt he ever awarded to anybody. He gave me a black belt, gave me a 3rd degree black belt. But anyway, I was always like, I always was able to, I had a lot of wind and I would always be able to out condition people. I always had good grip strength. And I knew a few tricks where I could bait people or feint or get ahead a little bit. If my conditioning if I could withstand the onslaught, they'd gas, then I could start doing something. Well, what I found out in the genetic test was that and my wife has the same gene, which is crazy because she did it as well. But there's like this power athlete, power sprinter gene. And now I'm like, oh my God, no wonder. I just had this like just random gene that actually helped me, even though I didn't consider myself this great athlete. And I honestly could have applied myself a lot more than I did. Younger. I missed that boat. I kind of have regrets about that. But I realized like, holy shit, this makes sense why I was able to at least be in the room with these guys, because it didn't make sense to me otherwise. I'm like, what am I doing here? Why am I hanging with these guys? It doesn't make sense to me. But genetically, there's a difference between your genotype, which is the genetic code, and your phenotype, which is the physical expression of the gene. Anyway, it's fascinating. I highly recommend anybody check it out. 10xhealthsystem.com, or just, I don't know if there's a way that they can contact me. If they email me, I could send them info as well.
Do you want to say your email?
Yeah, I don't care. I'll give people my phone number too. I don't really care, but
sure.
Yeah, my email is probably easiest. Just my name, jake.shannon@gmail.com. And just say, put something in the subject line so I know it's you and it's not some weird spam or something. But yeah, I'll help anybody I can.
you'll help them get hooked up with the 10x testing.
Yeah. And you're right, it is expensive. But that's kind of the thing with Grant in general. He's like, dude, people need to learn to make money. They don't teach you this stuff in high school. This stuff that you actually need to survive. Like, like one of the things that was always impressed in the pro wrestling community was like, dude, you need to actually go get a real degree. If you're going to do pro wrestling, you also need to get a real degree because, it's like being a rock star. You could go and be a great musician, but you may not be the next big thing. It's just, there's only so many spots, and some of it's luck and who you know, and you need to have something to back it up. And so, in this case, I don't know how it is in Canada, but in America now, it's all the people who do the trades, the plumbers, the electricians. They're the ones making the money, not the people with the college degrees, because it's not useful. So you need to figure out how to make money, and sometimes it is being a plumber and fixing somebody's shitter. It's not glamorous, but you're going to make $400 an hour overtime when somebody's toilet goes out at 2 a.m. and they need you.
Learn politics if you're going to get into wrestling. Get a degree related to that.
They're the same thing. They're the same thing. I look at all politics. This is a perfect season for this. All politics is a fucking work. I wrote a book in 2009, and actually, I was able to interview Jesse Ventura, and he loved Billy Robinson too. I used to have a radio show way back before podcasts were a thing. You had to have radio shows, and I had a radio show, and I started this idea that politics is pro wrestling. I had a whole chapter in this book in like 2008 that I wrote, and Ventura even picked up on the theme. But yeah, politics is a work, dude. Politics is a work.
And for Grant Cardone, do you have any personal stories about him you could share? You said you've interacted with him a bit. I know most wrestling fans won't know who he is, but I'm a big follower.
He's awesome, dude. He's funnier than hell. So I'll tell you a couple of stories. One time I had a hat. I don't got any hair, so I wear hats. And I had a hat, and it was all white. It was 10X with a white X. And it's like a rare hat. But I bought it at his store. And I'm talking to him, and he just looks at me, and he's like, did you bootleg my hat? Did you make this? And is this not licensed? I'm like, Grant, this is your hat. I bought it from you. Another time, we're at this fancy awards dinner, and I'm just standing there, and like I'm not paying attention. I'm looking at my phone, and he comes up and he like flicks me in the ear. But other than that, most of it is just, fun, hanging out, asking him a lot of advice. I asked him last time I saw him, I was like, okay, Grant, because he always kind of fucks around with politics a little bit. I'm like, when are you running for president? And he said, and now, mind you, he's a multi-billionaire. He's like, yeah, I don't got enough money for that. So he's just a great dude, man. He's a really great dude. I've met like I said, I've had a job with another billionaire in LA, and because of my work with my financial engineering master's degree. And dude, they're just not giving. Like literally, Grant could be in Monaco, could be doing whatever. He does not need to be helping people the way he does. And he does, dude. He shows up. He helps as many people. It's really cool. He's a good human being, really.
He seems like it. And honestly, I'd rather watch his videos than modern wrestling. That's where
He's funnier than hell, dude. You know what's a great show? What's a really great show is the reality. He did one reality show. Well, no, he actually did another reality show earlier on called The Turnaround King, which is great, but you can't find it. It's hard to find. You might be able to find it on YouTube. But this undercover billionaire show that he did, Discovery is the big network, right? They did this show. They did a couple seasons of it, and Grant was in season 2. And the premise is they take a billionaire, strip him of his identity, strip him of his money, strip him of his phone, of his contacts, give him $100, put him in the middle of nowhere, give him a fake identity, follow him around like a freaking Truman Show so he can't cheat, and say, okay, prove that the American dream is not dead, right? This idea that anybody can make it. You got 90 days to create $1 million company. right? That's crazy. 90 days. Like, well, Grant did this. And dude, that's like really putting on the line for a guy like Grant Cardone. It's like, what if he failed? He could have failed and it would have destroyed his brand. But he was like, no, I believe in what I'm doing. I must prove this to you people. And not only did he do it, I don't want to put any spoilers out there. You guys need to see this show. It's better than any NBA. If you want to learn how to make money and what it really takes, go watch this fucking show. It's like you can get it on Amazon for like $2 an episode instead of $60,000 for an NBA. It is amazing. You see how Grant does it. I'm not going to like tell you all the details, but Grant actually 5X's the target in half the time. He ended up, and he did it during lockdowns. And when all businesses were closed, he created a $5 million company in 45 days because he had COVID. It's the craziest shit to watch. This guy just freaking, it's amazing. It's really entertaining to watch. And he struggles, man. You can see him. There's times where he's crying and mad and frustrated, but he did it, dude. It's like watching like a Rocky movie, but it's a real thing. It's like watching somebody go for the Olympics and pull it off. It's amazing. I highly recommend it. Undercover Billionaire season 2.
Very interesting. And earlier you were talking about Shoot Pro Wrestling. You guys sent me a video a couple weeks ago. Pat Miletich is involved with this.
Matt Granahan has been really great and helped me out with it. He's been doing a lot of the legwork and some what I call business development. But dude, Pat Miletich is the president of Shoot. I have to pinch myself sometimes because it's like, dude, coach to 11 world MMA champions, UFC Hall of Famer, and first welterweight champion is the president. And then the other guy that we got involved is Jerry Briscoe, WWE Hall of Famer, 100% behind Shoot Pro Wrestling. So right now we're in this hustling mode. We've done 3 shows. These are more like proof of concept shows. So I could take them around to networks and see, like, dude, look at this. Look how good this content is. And this is like on 0 budget. Imagine you give me some money and some promotion, dude. I'm going to make you rich. Like, you got to see it. It's so good, dude. So Carl Gotch, circling all the way back to Carl Gotch, Carl helped me co-develop a rule set for catch wrestling. There hadn't been any competitive catch wrestling tournaments since 1909. It's called the Alhambra tournament. I started the first King of Catch in, I think it was like January, February 2007. So almost 100 years, 98 years, there hadn't been competitive catch wrestling. That was 100% on the up and up, right? Because it only takes one person to work a match, but a tournament's harder. Anyway, I took that rule set that Carl helped me with, and it's all documented. It's really great. I have the handwritten letters he wrote me when we were going back and forth on the rules and things, weight classes, all this stuff. And I applied the rule set from King of Catch, these singles matches, and I said, dude, I love UFC. I'm not a big fan of WWE. I'll watch it, but I love UFC. I love competitive fighting and grappling and wrestling. I love the NCAAs and stuff like that. Olympics, I'm not such a fan of freestyle as much as I am folk style, but freestyle is great too, and Greco. Anyway, I'm also a business guy, and I looked at the valuation. UFC was bought for $4 billion. WWE was bought for $8 billion. Double the valuation. It's not just millions, it's billions. Extra $4 billion. So I'm like, well, what can we learn from this? Clearly, they've figured out the business model.
They also had a better Q2 than UFC that just came out today. WWE actually made more in the second quarter.
Dude, they always do, bro. Like, the problem is what WWE has figured out, and that I'm leveraging with Shoot Pro, is the true limitation of UFC. UFC is promoted by a boxing promoter. That's what Dana White ultimately is. His school of thought is boxing. Because of that, it's the same match over and over and over. Yeah, maybe you get a couple extra rounds and longer rounds on championship matches, but it is the same match over and over and over. And I started looking like I loved Pride. Pride is way better than UFC. Always will be. But Pride now was MMA promoted like pro wrestling because it came up out of the UWF line of promoters, like Takada and these guys, right? I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, the real advantage that UFC has, I mean, that WWE has over UFC, is that it can be presented as a variety show. There could be, in pro wrestling, there's tag teams, three-man single, three-way single-man tag, which is a triple threat or what we call a triple shoot, which we've held, competitive triple shoot matches, singles matches. Now, WWE could even go crazier with hardcore matches, table ladders and chairs, all this shit, bra panty matches, whatever, right? So, but they figured out that it's a variety show. And so I started thinking, I'm like, dude, we can do a lot of this stuff with shoot. We could do this competitively. Pro wrestling's been around in the public consciousness. It is the longest running television show in history. It's been on TV since TV started in the 50s. It is part of the iconography of the West. Why can't we make this competitive? It's never been done before. It's the craziest thing. Like, not since Frank Gotch, Tom Jenkins, Hackett Schmidt. I can't believe nobody else has thought of this. It blows my mind. So I'm 100% in. I'm so sold on this. And the fact that there's been this endeavor, this TKO merger, is only just pure vindication of what I've seen since 2003, of this vision that I have for scientific wrestling, King of Catch Wrestling, and Shoot Pro Wrestling, that right now, TKO, Endeavor, Ari Emanuel, he has chocolate and he has peanut butter. How long until they put it together for Reese's peanut butter cups? You know what I mean? I'm ahead of them. I'm like, guys, let me help you. Give me some money. I've got a great Rolodex of wrestlers. Let's do this. Look at this amazing footage we've done. And I'll tell you, the tag teams are mind-blowing. They're so super fun.
Do you have any stories about Josh Barnett? I know you two have trained together and you're both disciples of Billy Robinson. And you go out. I've seen the restaurant pictures and everything. You guys seem like pretty good friends.
Josh is a great human being. Josh is a good dude. I've known Josh since he reached out to me to get the introduction to Carl. And we've just been solid back and forth for years. I didn't really train with Josh per se. We kind of just missed each other a little bit on that, but we knew everybody that was the same. And so we just became really good friends. And then, when I went into this thing with Billy Robinson, I was very selfish in some ways. I was like, dude, I want to learn everything myself. But I was also like, I can't be the only one. Other people probably want to know this. I mean, I was making so much money back then. I did not have to. I could have just paid Billy and learned everything, and he died and I'd be some whatever. But I wanted it to spread and be big. I wanted it to be bigger than jiu-jitsu. And so I built a lot of what I did around Billy for 7 years. Scientific wrestling was really built a lot around Billy. Now, I had already been working with Wade Chalice. Again, this guy who's down in Florida, Clarion wrestler, Guinness record holder, beating everybody, beating Lee Kemp, beating just a stud, right? Anyway, Guinness record holder. I'd already been wrestling with him for a while, but when Billy came around, I was like, oh shit. Wade is great with folk style, funk. He invented funk, basically funk wrestling, like you see with Ben Askren and stuff. Wade invented it. But when Billy came around, I was like, dude, I got a special opportunity. I dropped everything and did everything with Billy. But when Billy died, Billy ended up being like family to me, honestly. And it was hard. It was really depressing for me when he died. And when he died was also when I was learning about my own carotid dissections, and I was having to hang my boots up. And it was a difficult time. I I think I was having strokes. Well, I know I was having strokes, and it was just a fucked up time for me. And I almost just let scientific wrestling die. I was like, this is too hurtful. I don't want to deal with this shit. It's like not fun. And some of my friends, one of them being a guy I mentioned earlier, Sam Crescent, and another one being my wife. My wife was like, dude, if you drop this, Billy would be pissed. He would be fucking pissed. And I was like, okay, you're right. But I still didn't really, I didn't have it, dude. It just took, between me fucking stroking out, and then me not being able to wrestle. I mean, I don't know if you went through this. You're how old are you now, Hannibal?
41. And yes, I'm dealing with my career being over too. I know what it's like.
It's depressing, dude. I'm just gonna be fucking real. It's really depressing when a lot of your identity is wrapped up in this shit. And so, and I wasn't even that great, but I just loved it so much. When I had to give it up, it was lame. So anyway, during that time, Wade, who is another guy who's like my uncle, like family, and Josh, very good friend, kind of picked up the mantle for me when Billy dropped off, and I didn't want to do anything, and I just kept the company running and just booked those two guys. And they went around, and it just allowed me to fucking get my head on straight. And so, Josh was very instrumental, very helpful. Josh has been really helpful. He's been nothing but solid as a human being. And now, because I'm doing a lot of this stuff myself now, and I'm back, and I'm feeling excited, and I'm wanting to do things. I don't do as much with Josh, but Josh is just a great dude. Eric Paulson is a great guy. I've got so many really great friends in this space. Just good human beings,
Back when I was doing grappling tournaments, and I did have some success about 12 or 13 years ago, won a bunch of championships. I was watching your and Eric Paulson's videos on YouTube. And I actually would use your neck cranks and so forth in matches, and I really found that they worked well for me because they were more second nature as an amateur wrestler.
Yeah, like the jiu-jitsu setups. The thing that makes me so mad as a coach now is I feel this like this kind of like burning need to stop the amateur wrestlers when they're done with college going to the jiu-jitsu club. I'm like, no, dude, don't unlearn all this shit. Don't start laying on your back, dude. I can help you with all the submissions from all the positions you're already good at. I could show you how to turn Nelsons into Darces. I could show you how to, or neck cranks. I could show you how to turn cradles into leg locks, arm locks, neck cranks. I could show you how to do all this stuff, dude. Do not go this other route, but I sometimes I don't have a big enough bullhorn. Jiu-jitsu is so huge. It's so huge. It blows my mind. It's great. I don't begrudge them. It's just, I'm like, guys, try chocolate ice cream. It's better. I don't know.
Yeah, particularly if you're an amateur wrestler first, but just for the fans watching that might not be familiar with you, your stuff does work. I know that firsthand, and I wouldn't say that if it didn't.
No, I appreciate that. You're one hell of a stud, dude. You had a great career. I mean, not just grappling, but like pro wrestling, all of it. I followed your stuff as well, so I appreciate that, and that's really what I've wanted to do, right? Like, I'm not a John Danaher or anything like that, but like my whole point is with my endeavor with Catch as Catch Can is to codify it and allow it to keep on, because it almost died. Like, that's no bullshit. And I've published like dozens of books, had 3 best-selling instructionals on BJJ Fanatics, done all my own instructionals, coached thousands of people all over the world. It kind of blows my mind when I look back at it. I'm like, dude, that was me. That's crazy. But that's been my effort, has been to be like, dude, don't forget this shit. Go look at these old books. There's all these submissions. You guys are like trying to reinvent the wheel, and you're doing it shitty. These guys already figured it out. Start there. Don't reinvent and then fuck it up. Start where they were and do really great shit.
And Eric Paulson, for those who don't know, he was part of at least one of Brock Lesnar's training camps, if not more, helping him with the grappling, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think
he's in one of the
around
UFC
that-
All Access videos training with him.
I could be mistaken, but I think it was right around that mirror fight. I could be mistaken, but yeah, Eric is like Eric's a walking encyclopedia. Eric, I had all these great old time friends, and one of them was Gene LaBelle. Gene LaBelle was very good to me, a very very good person and very helpful to me. I worked out at Gene's place maybe about a year when I was in LA. He was fantastic. He was there at my wedding. I've co-presented awards with Gene. Gene used to take me all around LA to like the what's it called? This not sports club LA. It's like the Sportsman's Lodge or some shit. It's like this old school, like where like a Sinatra in LA would go. It's like really cool. But Eric reminds me of Gene LaBelle, like very, very similar energy. And Eric's an interesting guy. He's kind of like, he's a little strange. Like he has esoteric, let me say esoteric, like not the common way of thinking. But dude, that guy's an encyclopedia. He could tell you anything about everything with regards to combat sports, like Savate and, French kickboxing or Muay Thai or Jiu-Jitsu. Like he's a Machado black belt, I think. Like he's a walking encyclopedia, Eric.
Now, when you were training with Gene LaBelle, was Ronda Rousey around?
No, but I have a Ronda Rousey story.
Okay.
I'm also friends with a guy named Mark Schultz. He's the guy where this Foxcatcher movie came out. He was the Olympic gold medalist who had a brother who was killed by John DuPont, all this awful stuff. And Mark is another just amazing human being. Well, anyway, Mark was a friend of mine. Is still a friend of mine. I don't talk to him as much anymore. But back in the day when I was more active, I was trying to learn from Mark as well as much as possible. And Mark, because I was living in Santa Monica in LA, like Venice Beach is where I was living. Mark helped me get my first catch wrestling club. And it was at the Santa Monica High School wrestling gym with a guy named Mark Black. Mark Black was a high school teacher there. Amazing human being. Let me run my catch wrestling club out of the folk style club at Santa Monica High School for years. This is the high school that Ronda Rousey went to, was Santa Monica High School. And she was a high school student when I was there. And everybody was telling her to come to my catch wrestling class because it was at the school. It was like convenient. But her mother refused because it wasn't judo. She's like, no, it's not judo. You cannot go. So almost coached Ronda Rousey at Santa Monica High School, but got the kibosh on it. But she did good training with literally the legend Gene LaBelle, which is like, how can you beat that, dude? Like, oh my God.
And speaking of medical care, the best hospital I ever went to was in Santa Monica. It had valet parking.
Yeah. My daughter was born there. That's where Tom Cruise's daughter, Siri, or whatever her name is, was born. Suri was born there too. My daughter was born at, I think it's St. John's, I want to say. But yeah, great hospital.
It was actually a pleasure to get treated there. Luckily, I had insurance, but
yeah, it's like a Hollywood hospital. It's like Santa Monica is kind of a nicer part of LA because it's close to the ocean.
What do you? And I won't go on too much longer, but how was living in LA overall?
At that time, it was fantastic. I wouldn't want to live there now, but when I lived there, I was there from the very end of 2002 until about 2006. And I lived on Venice Beach. Like literally I walk out of my apartment and Muscle Beach is right there. It was freaking awesome. And I'm in my I'm about 30 years old. So I'm kind of in a physical peak. I'm in great shape. I'm making more money than I'd ever made. I was making $200,000 a year. I just got my master's degree in 2002. I was working in investment banking. This is when I was working for that other billionaire. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I met my wife there. We have 3 kids, been married 18 years now. That's where I started my coaching of catch wrestling. It's where I had Billy Robinson for the first time. It's where I held the first King of Catch, was at the Santa Monica High School Wrestling Gym. I loved it. LA was crucial for me. Now, would I want to live there now? No. LA has jumped the shark. It's sad. And again, it's politics. The homeless is bad. The economy is crap. They didn't let people out of lockdowns. Like it was stupid, dude. It was stupid. I would probably be in jail because I'd be fighting people over dumb laws in California because they're just so socialist. You can't do nothing anymore. But like I said, at a certain time in my life, it was the greatest thing I ever did was living there. And I lived in San Francisco, Colorado, lived in Salt Lake City for a while. That was a bizarre place to live. But LA by far was the best. But I'm in Denver now, and I'm actually, I love Denver right now for where I'm at with kids and running businesses and doing stuff like that. My folks, I'm blessed, are still alive. They're in their 80s. And so I'm able to be here. I've got my kids living with me. I got my wife, got great. I just got to, I'm very blessed. So, but LA, dude, back in the day was like epic.
Was Billy Robinson living in LA at that time too?
No, he was in Little Rock, Arkansas. So
of all places.
Yeah, dude. And
That's
he had a hard time, right? Because, right, it's kind of, I mean, I don't want to make, generalizations, but it's, the South. And he's like this kind of traveled international celebrity athlete.
Yeah, aristocratic type gimmick at times too.
Dude, he had a hard time there. But his son, Spencer, I think he's like a colonel, or he might be a general in the National Guard here in the United States. And he was stationed in Little Rock, and he was Billy's only child. And, I think Billy had a lot of regrets. To be like a world-class athlete like that, you're not a great dad because you're traveling and you're not there. And so, I think that was one of the regrets Billy really had. And he tried to make better on that at the end of his life and be there with his son. But it was Little Rock. And so I would fly him everywhere. It would just be hilarious because he'd either be hobbling on his cane or they'd be wheeling him around in a wheelchair. But dude, that guy was tougher than hell. I'll tell you, he was in so much pain from all his injuries, and he just was tough. And dude, you'd get him off the mat, and he's this like wise, like history professor kind of guy. But you get him on the mat, dude, and I saw the toughest guys just from his force of will and his just who he was just freaking crumble in front of him. And he was just this old decrepit dude still. But
the one DVD you missed the boat on is the tour of Little Rock, Arkansas with Billy Robinson.
Yeah. Oh God. That would have been comical. Yeah,
so
that would have been like an Andy Kaufman film.
Yeah, that would have been great. But I learned something new, that he spent his final time there, which I would never have imagined in a million years. But now I know why, and that makes perfect sense. And it's kind of good to know that he was good like that with his son.
Yeah.
So where can people follow you? You said your email before, but maybe if anyone's just tuning in now to refresh.
Yeah, so probably the best places, for people that are fans of your show would be scientificwrestling.com. Or they can go to our Instagram. I got it blows my mind. I have 166,000 or something followers on Instagram. It's just at Scientific Wrestling. But scientificwrestling.com, there's all kinds of information, a lot of free stuff. Like I mentioned earlier, I host carlgotch.com, and it's hours. If you're into this shit, you're into the history of pro wrestling and the history of MMA, these conversations with Carl are gold, in my opinion. But, I'm biased because I'm in them. Scientific Wrestling is probably the best place.
I'm definitely going to check some of those out because I wasn't aware that they existed. And I always hear about the legendary Carl Gotch, but I never heard any real interviews with him other than short ones. So I'll definitely
He never gave them, dude. He never gave them. I just, dude, I don't know what it is, man, but they were just really good people to me. And we just clicked, and I just was like so obsessed with what they knew in their life. And I was like, dude, let me learn this, please. Let me help with your legacy, and they did. And I just very blessed.
I'm not a cigar smoker either, and I could just imagine drinking that
Oh,
syrup wine
dude,
and smoking
dude, it
cigars.
makes my stomach right now. My stomach's like churning just from the memory. It was not good, dude. It was rough.
It's so funny, but it seems very fitting.
Yeah, I think he was. I think it was a rip. Now that I think back, I'm like, dude, he was totally doing a dick move, like messing with me. But I was too stupid and excited and eager to even pick up on it back then.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us and giving us all that information. I'll let you close this off with whatever you want to say to the fans.
Oh man, I just really appreciate the hell out of you, Hannibal. You're great. I appreciate you doing this. I'm like so stoked that you've had so much success because you like a lot of the stuff that I like. So um, I'm just real honored to be here, and thank you so much for spending so much time with me. And yeah, like honestly, Catch as Catch Can it is the greatest, most impactful, and I can prove that quantitatively. I can quantify it. I'm a mathematician. I was a professional statistician. Don't even get me started. But Catch as Catch Can, Olympic wrestling, which is all over TV right now. Think of all the athletes, fans, coaches, and promoters that have been involved with freestyle wrestling, which is amateur catch as catch can, which is its first name in the first Olympics it appeared in 1904. Think of all the athletes involved with freestyle worldwide in the last 120 years or whatever. Fans, all that. That's just one derivative of catch wrestling. Professional wrestling, top 10 YouTube channel, WWE. Think of the number of fans. Okay. Pro wrestling is a theatrical representation of catch wrestling. The rules of pro wrestling are catch wrestling, like the straight singles matches. NCAA wrestling in American, collegiate, scholastic wrestling here in the States, again, was called amateur catch as catch can. This one's going to rub people raw, but Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was a response to catch wrestling. Count Coma was the pro wrestling name of Maeda, who is the guy who taught the Brazilians jiu-jitsu when he emigrated from Japan to Brazil. But he learned his style that he taught to the Gracies in response to him going into these catch wrestling tournaments and having to go through the ringer with these catch wrestlers and how to be offensive off of his back because they would just stick him. So Brazilian jiu-jitsu, MMA. People want to say it was the Gracies. Well, I'm sorry. Pancras held their first match a month prior. And if that's not good enough for you, you can go look at Shuto, which is an organization that Eric Paulson even wrestled for or fought in. Shuto, which was Tiger Mask, Satoru Sayama, who was a Karl Gotch acolyte, was happening in the 80s, dude, or like the early 90s or whatever Shuto started, way before the UFC. And then you can even look at the Muhammad Ali mixed match with Inoki. Karl Gotch was in his corner. Look at Gene LaBelle, had the first mixed match against the boxer Milo Savage in Salt Lake City. And Gene considers himself a catch wrestler. So, it is so massively impactful. It's bigger than soccer, but nobody knows it. And so that's really my mission, is to get catch wrestling the respect it deserves for what it is, the most impactful sport, not just combat sport, the most impactful sport the world's ever seen.